Hello everyone, Diana here to show you how to make a custom item on the Tattered Weave template. So what you're going to start off with is this PSD and whatever art program you want to use. We have all of our poses here in a folder for you so you can switch between all four. You will need all four in order to make a submission. For some items like hats or short hair, you won't need to redraw anything, but for items like shirts, there will need to be some redrawing or transforming, and I'm going to try to cover that in here. So up here in the your item here, that's where you're going to start with a sketch layer. I usually sketch in pink. So I like to start on the Cheerful Feminine base because it's one of the larger ones, and for me it's easier to erase than it is to add. So just as an example, I'm going to zoom in to 100% here, and let's do something like one of those sexy cross tops that like goes behind your neck or whatever. And then hangs down. No, I don't like that. We'll make it tight. Maybe we'll make it short so that it shows your belly button. Alright. So I have my sketch here, and like I said, I like to just do one item at a time. So with the sketch, next up, going to make lines. Your lines should always be black, and the way that you can look at thickness is just try to compare it to the thickness of the lines on the avatar itself. So like that's like a little bit too thick, so I'm gonna make mine a little bit smaller. And you can see here that I'm not the best at dealing with shaky hands. Now with tiny lines, you know, when you're zoomed in like this, it can be very easy to get yourself lost in the details. You won't be able to see that once it's shrunk down. Something you can do up here is by having new window, and then we're going to do 2 vertical. So now what I can do is I can shrink this one down. Oopsie, wrong way. So that sort of gives me a better idea of what it's going to look like when it's shrunk down. So again, that helps keep me focused on the fact that you're not going to be able to see these tiny little details. Oh boy. Oh, also a good idea is to turn the poses a little bit see-through, so that way you know where your darker lines are. It's always better to have your lines go a little bit beyond the art, because you really don't want an accidental body part sticking out from behind your artwork. And as you can tell here, I have no idea what I'm doing. Actually, I liked that. It's kind of cool. Alright, so I have my lines. It still looks like the boobs are pointing out a little bit. The nice thing about that is since it's black lines, you'll be a little bit covered even if it doesn't quite match up all the way, so it gives you a little bit of lenience. If we wanted to make this big enough to be seen, we're just going to use the image here on the side as an example and make sure that we draw it large enough where we can see a little bit of that color on the inside. So there, now we can see that there's some color there. Excellent. All right, and we have our lines. So for color, I tend to just put it underneath the lines. I do a base color, so you'll see up here I actually have swatches for all of the basic tattered weave colors that we use over and over again. So like, let's say I want to do a orange shirt here, so I would take my base color orange and just fill it in, la 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 la. Usually I do the edges first because I'm very messy in Photoshop and tend to scribble outside of the lines very easily. So obviously your methods may vary. The important part to remember when you're coloring items for tattered weave is just that you should always have your base color as well as 2 shadows and 1 highlight. Alright, the lines look a little weird with the color filled in, so I'm gonna adjust those probably as we go and I figure out how to shade, because I am not actually one of our artists. I'm the programmer, so that's why this probably looks like butts. Alright, so we have our base color. Then we're going to add a layer, and again, for sake of ease, the way I do it is I create a clipping mask so that way it won't ever go outside the lines because I'm very, very messy. So I always do shadow 2 first of like the exact, like absolute darkest areas. So I want my brush to be small again, not that small. Select my shadow 2 and like, okay, so we're gonna want it sort of underneath the breasts, and again, a way that you can sort of do this a little bit sneakily is if you lower the opacity and then increase the opacity here, you can kind of see where the natural shadows are already. Oopsie, let's stay on here. So like we can see here is where we have our natural black, very dark shadows. So I, again, will just like scribble this in to sort of get an idea for myself. And then we'll turn the opacity back up and the opacity back down. So that way I can look at this and sort of try to fill it in based off of what I just scribbled. So like we have these folds here that would have shadows. It's hard for me to remember that I'm recording and I have to speak clearly, so I apologize if the mic is a little difficult. I'm going to try to fix that in editing. Alright, I think that's good for shadow 2. Maybe, yeah, I think that's fine. Again, you won't be able to see a lot of this color, so there's no need for me to like go in here and like try to do a teeny tiny bit on here. It's just a little bit silly. So then we're going to want shadow 1, which should go above. Shadow 1. Alright, and we'll select that color here. oh, actually, should go below, since this was smaller space. So, you know, since we have this going across, we can do something like that. Maybe give it a little depth on the side. A little bit of a dip. Again, a lot of this is not going to show up, so it doesn't super matter. All right, so there's our shadows, and then we're going to want our highlight, which goes all the way on top and is this lightest color. Again, you can sort of see on the avatar that we have a lot of highlights on the edges. So that's something you can consider doing if you would like to. And again, I look over here and decide whether I like where the placement is. Because like that just looks weird to me. Ooh, not gonna like that. Yeah, we'll just add a little there, maybe a little bit up here. Oopsie. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with how that's looking over here. Now, once you finish it, again, the palettes that I have here are standard colors, but if you want to adjust things, like if I decide that I really don't like that shadow one, I use the Control U hue saturation shortcut, and you know, if I want to maybe, ooh, not that way, make it a little darker, lighter, slightly more red, you know, I can adjust. But again, I'm showing this for the purpose of what we would have here. So we've completed our cheerful feminine pose here. We're going to want to put the name of this, we'll call this cross top. I guess it's kind of, I don't know what these things are called. So we finished our item. In order to export, you want to turn off the pose, turn off the background. You're going to save it at 200 by 250. I have a macro key on my keyboard for that. You want to make sure that it's ping 24 and that it has the transparency. So you would save this as the cross shirt cheerful feminine. Save. All right. You can also see here that like my lines aren't perfectly covered up. It's usually a good idea to fill those in just in case you have layering issues. But again, that's really up to you. It's very hard to notice unless you're doing a lot of layering with like certain colors. So you can go fill this in, and then again you should really check it with everything turned back on to make sure you didn't go outside the lines like I do all the time. All right, so let's see. Yeah, it doesn't look like I went outside the lines, so we'll turn these back off, save as again, and we're going to do it the same thing. Replace. Okay, so we now have our shirt for Cheerful Feminine. Next up, I think I'm going to do the Confident Feminine. So I duplicate this. I'm going to call this Confem. Should probably also label this so that future me knows what the heck I was doing. So turn that one off. Now what we can do with this one is we can make adjustments and try and alter it. I'm going to need this to be a little bit lighter. There we go. So first easy thing to do is just try and drag it over. And like, so you want to match up the boobs a little bit. And again, I like to lower the opacity to just sort of have a guide on where I'm going here. So like I want to tilt it a little bit. All right, and the boobs are going to need to be a little bigger, but at this point that looks pretty close. So I'm going to say yes to that transformation. And then go in here on the lines and do some more transforming. So I will use this as a way to cheat my way through getting it to fit, because the transform tools make me not have to redraw things, which I find very helpful. And again, like you can see that it kind of skews the lines so that they're a little bit thicker on one side, but it's not something you're going to be able to notice over here. So then it does mean you have to go in and fix a little bit of the colors, but again, doing this here is like super easy. Just going to go in, grab my shadow 1, add it in there, grab my shadow 2, add it in there. Ta-da! All right, so now we need to edit out the hand, and so what I will do with the hands is I usually do masks. So I add this button down here, which is a mask, and then use my transformation tool to select as much of the hand as I want. Probably don't need to go all the way down here. All right, but on here, I'm going to fill this with black to hide it. Ta-da! And then on the lines, add a teeny bit of black around here. So that way, if you use layers with it, it's all covered up. It looks like the cutout is supposed to be there. You don't have to do this. Like you can just leave it with a mask and no lines. That works too. All right, I can already see when I'm zoomed in that I missed a little bit of the base color. I'm gonna add that in there. But yeah, ta-da, that wasn't so hard. All right, so now we have to do it for our male poses. So again, I go to the original, duplicate that. We're gonna do it as cheerful masculine. Turn off the cheerful feminine. All right, cheerful masculine pose. So what we're gonna wanna do to this one is get rid of those boobies and the hips, because that's the differences between our two poses. So, it's still in the same place. We're not going to need to do anything there. So really what I do for this one is just erase. So I'm going to erase those boobs and erase those hips. Take my black and the chest here for the male poses can be a little difficult to work with because of the pecs. but again, this one in particular is a very feminine shirt, so I don't feel bad making it super tight. If you want this to look more masculine, then just don't have it suction down here, like have it hang down much looser, and it'll look much more masculine. Alright, so then if we just go to our base color, la 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 la, none of this was here. Oops, I forgot to put the lines over here. Alright, let's turn this back up to opacity to make sure that looks okay over here on our little base. It mostly does, but I think I'm going to add a couple of little touches, like I'm going to add the highlight back in over here on the edge, maybe lower it a little bit, and get my shadow 1 to have a little bit more form here. Maybe a little bit with shadow 2, although I'm not sure you'll be able to tell. Yeah, can't even tell. That's fine. All right, so voila, we already have our cheerful masculine done. All right, and then we're gonna need our confident masculine. So I'm gonna duplicate this one, make it confident masculine, hide that one. All right, and now let's shift it over. Actually, let's slightly lower the opacity so I can see what I'm doing. Don't have to adjust it a ton. Yeah, so that looks pretty good. We're just going to need to mask out the hand and maybe extend the shirt a little bit over that way. So yeah. Okay, I'm going to go into my lines. Oopsie. Make sure that my lines are black. Extend this that way. Add a mask. Select our hand. Boop. Deselect. All right, back into, oh, well, let's turn this back up, back into lines. And we're gonna just trace around the edges there. All right, and give ourselves some base color orange to fill that in with a highlight. Now that looks a little bit weird, but again, you're not really able to tell on the shrunken down version, so I'm not going to worry about it. All right, so we've done our 4 different forms. Looks like they fit, and so we're going to turn off our poses, turn off our background, and export the way that we named them. So here we have our confem. So save it as cross shirt confem. Here we have cross shirt con mass. And oopsie, cross shirt cheerful mass. All right, and now the last image that you're going to need is a thumbnail. So usually I go to whichever one I started with, so oftentimes the cheerful feminine pose, particularly since this is a very feminine top, and I'm going to just select it into a square. Try to fit it into a square. If you hold the Shift key, it'll make a perfect square for you. And then Control Shift C to copy everything as a flat layer, and Control N for a new image. Okay, that's definitely not a square, but all right, make sure you don't have a background on for this one as well. We are going to save this. Yeah, it's not quite even, so we'll just go in here, image, size. You want this, the maximum size to be 100. And then we're going to go to our canvas size and make sure that it's 100 by 100, because this is going to be our thumbnail. So 100 by 100, this is our cross shirt thumbnail. And voila! You now have your submission ready. All right, thanks for tuning in. If there's anything else I can help you with, I'll be uploading a couple more videos so that we can talk more about custom items. Thanks.